Hey guys, Scott here. Today we're going to be going over the developer update for January 2023. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and I guess we'll just get right into it. The first part is the whole Survivor Activity HUD. This is basically the solo queue improvements that we've been requesting for a really long time. So what's going to happen is when you're playing in solo queue, I guess when you're playing with Survivor with Friends too, but it's not going to really help anymore, is you will have little icons next to your name indicating what you're currently doing. And your teammates will have this as well. So if you're sitting there on the hook, you can see one of your teammates is on the generator, one of them is breaking a totem, one of them has nothing, which means they're probably free to come save you. So there's going to be that little bit of extra non-spoken communication now where you'll have a little bit more coordination and you'll be able to actually make plays that are a bit more efficient in your standard solo queue match. And I think that's really, really kind of been necessary because solo queue is frankly a nightmare lately. And giving survivors communication, I think, is just objectively a great thing. It brings the balance between solo queue and survive with friends a bit closer. So now any changes they make are a bit less polarized to either side. And that's what they need to be pushing towards. So I think that's a really good way to do it. They're also going to have icons for specific killer actions like Doctor's, madness snapping out of it or Freddy waking up, things like that, which is very welcome. I think it's unnecessary at that point. But honestly, the more icons, the better. Not a big deal. I think that is really, really good. And, like they said, this is not going to help Survive with Friends at all because you can already talk to each other and already communicate that regardless. So it's not going to help them. It's just going to help solo queue, which is the entire point. And there's even going to be a new indicator for when you're getting chased by the killer, which is kind of similar to the obsession chase little animation that is currently in the game, but it'll be for everybody now. So that is really useful. I think these are great changes. I can't really think of anyone complaining about these. These have been welcome for a long time. And the bridging between solo queue and Survive with Friends, as they mentioned, is something that they've needed to do for a while. And this is an excellent, excellent start. Next are the wiggle mechanics. They're making the skill check wiggles the only option that you have now. They're removing the regular one, which is a shame because I like the regular one, but it's still, not that big of a deal. The one thing they are doing is if you hit every single great skill check when you're doing the wiggle skill checks, you would actually wiggle out 1 second faster. They've removed that, but changed it. So now if you hit those, you shift left and right more. So this will probably end up having the same effect. Instead of simply, lasting 1 second less, you will now move the killer out of the direction they're running slightly more and more. And over the course of that whole wiggle duration, I'm willing to bet it's going to roughly end up being about a second less. So I don't really think that's a nerf. I think that's pretty much the exact same. It's not even really a nerf, considering the wiggle skill checks kind of gave you a buff that the other skill set or check system did not have. So it ended up kind of just being mismatched, and you got rewarded for using one system over the other, which is weird. So I think this is fine. I'm not a fan of it. I like the old system better, but it's whatever. It's not a big deal. One thing they did do is remove the sound effect from when you do not hit a skill check while you're wiggling. A lot of times, if the game's over, you're not going to bother wiggling, so you just sit there, but then it goes dung, 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 and it's really annoying. So they did remove that, and that's really nice. So that's a little quality of life things there. And now, the big topic, Nerfs. They have admitted that Nerfs... They've literally said not much can stand between a good nurse and the survivor she's trying to kill. That's literally saying there's nothing you can do against the nurse. So the developers are now even saying that there's nothing you can do against the nurse. So just run out the nurse forehead is not even something the developers would agree with at this point. So they are making the first change that I think is really, really good. They're making her blink attacks no longer basic attacks. What that means is they will no longer benefit from perks that require you to do a basic attack, namely things like being exposed, for example, through NOED or Starstruck and Agitation, especially Haunted Grounds, Devour Hope, things like that. These will no longer apply a one-shot down because now it's the same as hitting a special attack, like a Demogorgon Shred, for example, is not going to one-shot someone that's exposed. And I think that's a really, really good start for Nurse. The problem is really, really good nurses are typically running like, maybe 1 or 2 slowdowns, and then they'll run like Starstruck Agitation for very quick downs. The thing is, if you make Starstruck Agitation not work anymore and they want to win and be sweaty, they're probably just going to run 2 more slowdowns now. So I have a fear this will result in just more slowdown nurse, which means the chases will take longer because you're not getting one shot as much, but the game also lasts longer too. So it could be a bit of a double-edged sword that I'm not super looking forward to. Nurse is still the best killer in the game with this change, not even a question. So you don't have to worry about her dropping in tears or anything like that. You can still absolutely destroy people with Nurse if you're good at her. without one-shots. And if anything, this will just incentivize the nurse to have even more slowdowns now, which I think will be even worse. I'd rather go against a no slowdown nurse that has all exposed perks that just wins in 20 seconds than have, a 10-minute dragged out game against nurse. But to each their own. Still, very good change. I think that's a really good start. I think there's still some add-ons that need to be changed and stuff. They have nerfed a couple of add-ons that don't really need it, and they also have buffed add-ons that didn't really need it. So this used to be, I believe, 15 seconds and 60 seconds for a cooldown. So now it's 25 and 45. So they're trying to give the other more interesting add-ons a bit of the time in the sun, which I think is a good idea. But for the most part, they haven't talked about what they're doing about like range and recharge and stuff like that. I'm assuming they're just going to be straight up nerfed, since this seems to be a nerf nurse kind of patch. I can't imagine they're going to buff these things because they are unanimously seen as extremely strong. Which good if that's the case. If they nerf range and recharge, I'm totally fine with that. That'd be excellent. Those are add-ons that have carried a lot of nurses for a very long time. And although the range was still nerfed, it's still extremely hard to deal with. So I would be very happy with those getting nerfed. Again, she would still be the strongest killer in the game, so relax if you're a nurse player. You'll be just fine. But these are changes in a very, very good direction. The Knight, on the other hand, they have talked about some changes that, unfortunately, I don't think will do a damn thing. Knight is one of the least played killers I've ever seen. Knight, I think, might be one of the most universally disliked killers that they've ever made. It's like on par with the old Legion, where there's just no gameplay on either side. No one's having fun. The Knight's not having fun because if you're not in a corner of the map, the Knight sucks ass. But if you are in a corner of the map, then the Knight, you can't do anything about the Knight. It's just like everyone is just unhappy, survivors and killer both. So they really needed to do some sweeping changes to incentivize other playstyles with the Knight, but they didn't really do that. What they did do is make it so that visible green orb that happens when you are sending out a guard goes away after 10 meters. The problem is sitting in your power, setting up a patrol like that is almost always the wrong choice. Because if you sit there for 5 seconds setting up a really cool path, the survivor is just going to run away. Now, they've said the Knight will gain the haste status effect for a few seconds longer after it's a path longer than 10 meters, but it still doesn't matter unless it's like a 40% haste or something insane, which it's very clearly not going to be. You're still going to be losing more distance setting that up. So it'll always be better just shitting out your guard once in a millisecond and then locking a survivor down in that way and hoping that there's not a connected tile. That will still be the only correct way to play this killer. It doesn't matter how much cooler or how much harder it is for you to see. If you have to sit there in your power, the survivor is just going to run away. And even if they run away directly into your guard, at that point, you are so far away from the survivor, they will outrun you and your guard, and you've accomplished nothing. So this doesn't change the Knight at all, unfortunately. I get what they're going for, but this will have essentially no effect on how he's currently played, unless people want to intentionally play him in a way that makes him weaker, which I don't think people want to do because Knight can be seen as pretty damn weak sometimes. So, unfortunately, this I don't think is going to do anything at all. One thing they did do is make it so guards that are sent out to hit gens now regress it by 2.5% additionally. That's cool, I guess. I don't know. It's not really much. That's pretty much it. I don't think this solves anything about the Knight, unfortunately. He just needs like to be completely different at this point. Like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do with this type of killer to make him interesting. I actually have no suggestions for once. I don't know what to do, but the changes they made here, it doesn't matter. The survivor will always start running away when he starts channeling his power. And even if they run right into your expertly placed guard, it still doesn't matter because they will just straight up outrun you and the guard. And I have a feeling that the haste effect is going to be something like 5 or 10% that will not even come close to making up the distance that you lost setting up that guard. We'll see. Maybe it'll be something crazy like 30%, and it actually will, but I highly, highly doubt that. I feel like it's going to be a very minor effect. Next, we have Eyrie of Crows. Eyrie of Crows is getting nerfed, thank God. This is a extremely survivor-sided map. It is very rectangular shape, and it seems like they're taking both ends and kind of crunching them down a bit, which is really, really nice. One of the problems was how long it simply takes to get from one end of that rectangle to the other, and if they make it a square, it'll be a lot easier to deal with. Shrinking maps is something that should happen to literally half of the maps in the game, and that would make half of the maps in the game actually significantly more balanced. For example, if you had Red Forest and you cut that map in half, it would actually be a pretty balanced map. It'd be pretty decent. But what we have now is it takes 50 seconds to just walk to the other side, and that should never be the case. So I am always in support of cutting maps into smaller sizes. Things like Father Campbell's Chapel or Wrecker's Yard or Coal Tower, I've always felt are the ideal size for maps. It bridges the gap between killers that have map control and killers that don't. And that is something that I think needs to happen overall, because maps are, without a doubt, still the biggest problem in the game. They've always been the biggest problem in the game, and I have a feeling they will continue to be the biggest problem in the game. But changes like this are great. I just wish they happened a bit more frequently, because at the rate that they release new bad maps, they fix old bad maps. So we're just still with the same ratio of good to bad maps, because they keep releasing new bad ones and then fixing the old ones. So I just wish they did this a bit faster, but it's still nice to see, and I'm really happy for that. So they also changed the amount of jungle gyms that'll spawn outside of the main building, so you can't chain them together as well, which is really nice. And they have a couple of new loops that frankly look not too strong for Survivor, which honestly, fuck it, that map is pretty damn Survivor-sided, so I'm okay with these changes. There's also a nice little thing that will now help you track the challenge that you're currently doing in your tome, which is neat. It'll let you know that you finished. Like if you've ever been doing it and you're like, oh wait, have I gotten 5 chases yet? Now you have a little indicator showing you mid-match, so you don't have to throw just to like run in front of the killer and get an additional chase or anything like that. So little things like that I think are totally fine, and I'm very welcome. Those are very welcome changes. That is good stuff. And other than that, they have, oh wait, there's one more change here. They've made it so Merciless Killer is now just with 4Ks. This will affect any achievements that involve getting 4Ks, such as the Adept achievements in the match. Is it possible? Well, that's cool. I'm glad they changed that. That's excellent timing for that change. Finally, they're doing some stuff with iridescent shards. There's no actual values to that yet, so I don't really know what to do. I don't know what to say about that. Lastly, they have been doing better with cheating. And I will admit, I think I've seen like 3 cheaters in the past like month, which is pretty good in my opinion compared to what it used to be. There's a lot of banned cheaters. So I think they are actually doing a good job with this. There have been a lot less blatant cheaters. I've had a couple of people that I watched pick themselves up with no exponential or no mither or unbreakable. Like some people still have like every perk and stuff like that, and you can always tell because they have ace in the hole, or I'm sorry, up the ante. And I've still noticed that occasionally, but for the most part, the amount of cheaters has gone down significantly, and that's great. So it seems they are doing whatever that they're doing, and it's working. So I am very happy to see that, because cheating was legitimately a plague on the game, and it seems like they're banning the shit out of cheaters. So high five, that's good shit. That is pretty much it. So overall, I think like 9 out of 10 of these changes are excellent. The only thing that didn't land at all was the Knight. The Knight is still going to be an abomination of a killer that should never have been made. But everything else seems pretty great. So not bad. Good shit. A-. See you next time.